And hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. So this is a little bit of a different format than usual. So I currently actually have a webcam, which is just my phone, so don't think too much about it. Anyhow, let's actually get to the Mac review, because this is like the third time I'm refilming this video because it just never sounds quite right. I never really get what I want to say, and every time I film it, my views on the Mac change ever so slightly. So it becomes very difficult to actually make a video on it because I never know what I'm going to think about it next. Because it starts off really bad, then the next one is kind of good, and then it goes back to a little bit bad, and yeah, I just never get to the actual video. So maybe I'm lucky and this is the last one. Recently, I've used a MacBook Air M2, and this has been for about 10 months right now. So just for perspective or for context, I have been using the MSI, and I'm reading this, MSI C12M-084ZA Modern 14. I've been using that before I got to the Mac, just for context, and when I wasn't using the Mac or that laptop, I was using my Linux desktop. Alright, so some information about the Mac I was using. It was the M2 Air with 16 gigs of RAM, and wow, that did burn a hole in my pocket just getting that 16 there. One thing I do like about the M4s coming out is it sounds like they're not going to be using 8 from the start anymore, it's going to be 16. The storage was 256 gigs, and the total price, and this is after shipping and after taxes and whatnot, the total price was 34,555 Rand. But I primarily use this Mac for work related stuff, so this is 90% of programming. The rest was an attempt on doing some YouTube content, but I was not too successful, unfortunately, and I'll explain why that is later in the video. Alright, so let's actually start with something good about it, before I go off and tell you why it's terrible or why it's great. We don't know yet. So first of all, the battery life, and this is a given. Like if you get a Mac, your battery life is insane. I was surprised. My previous laptop lasted like maybe 2 hours while I was working on it, and that's maybe. Sometimes it would only go like 30 minutes and then it was gone. It's done. It can't do anything anymore. So my previous laptop just couldn't even try. One of the things I didn't really like about that laptop was the battery life. It's one of the worst things about it. This Mac, however, and I kid you not, 13 hours while programming. So that's with VS Code open, with my work programs running in the background. 13 hours is insane. That is more than a whole workday. Nearing the end, when our stuff got a little bit more heavy and intensive, it lasted closer to about 7 hours, so it didn't last as long anymore. I don't know why necessarily, because once our things did get a little bit heavier, it shouldn't affect it that much. And I can't imagine the battery being that degraded so quickly, so I don't really know what happened there. So closer to the end, and this is after like 10 months, I got more like 7 hours out of it when working. But before that, and I timed it, it was like 13 hours straight working, and it just kept on going. I don't know why. That's amazing. And then if I didn't work, it usually lasted about 15 to 17 hours, depending on what I was doing. And this was mostly either watching YouTube or browsing or Showmax or whatever. So if you're just doing like watching things online, whatnot, it has a great battery life. And this helped a ton during load shedding, which luckily we don't seem to be having that anymore. But when I had it, we still had a little bit of it. So it helped a ton with load shedding. So if you are scared load shedding is coming back, I'd highly recommend the Mac. Not this one though, but I do recommend the Mac. And then we can get to the screen. The screen is actually pretty good. It's something I never really thought I would miss when it was gone, but it turns out it was a pretty good screen. At the start, I didn't really like it that much, primarily because of the weirdish aspect ratio. I don't know what happened there, because I'm used to like 16:9, so it made filming and editing stuff a little bit weirder than what it used to be. But other than like if you record the screen and you try to do something with it afterwards, and you want to use the usual 16:9 aspect ratio, other than that, the screen was perfect. I actually liked the aspect ratio because it gave you like a little bit extra on every side. I love the bezels so much. But you do have like a little bit of an annoying camera bump at the top. But you can hide it, and we'll get to that later. So yeah, it's a pretty good screen. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. Then we can get to the camera and mic, and I do think I did film like something with it. I will see if I still have the video, but I do think I did film it and move it over before I sent it away. So the camera and mic, they're okay. I personally think the camera sucks. Like, even my current camera I'm using to film this is okay. I don't think it's great or anything, but I think it's better than the Mac camera. Because the Mac camera, if you're like on a video call, it looks fantastic. But if you're like just opening up a camera app, which I don't even know if Mac has, I had to like figure it out myself. Like I actually record, I just used like OBS as my camera. It was very weird. But if you actually look at it through a camera and you size it up, it's like, yo. But it makes sense because did you see how thin that freaking top of the Mac is? It's super thin, so it makes sense if the camera isn't great and they're artificially trying to bump up the quality. That I can understand. So it's not really a downside, especially if you get something that thin. Because you have to go thicker if you want a good camera. That's why a lot of phones have that big camera bump, because if you want a good camera, you need to go thick. But the camera, I'll give it, is still pretty good, especially if you look at some of the features you get with it. So you can like blur your background, and you can like put custom backgrounds in. I can do that here, but let me actually show you. So I can do it without too much effort. So if I just go here, I could say, okay, I want to add a background removal. Boom, Bob's your uncle. My background is removed. It's not like super impressive if you try and I can even blur my background. It's pretty easy. But even compared to like, this is pretty good. But compared to what Mac can do, it's insane. Mac is great at doing this. This is going to be at 20 FPS, so if it looks bad, it's because of that 20 FPS. But it's pretty much an example of what you'll be getting if you work with this camera. The camera, I would say, is probably okay. I don't think it's necessarily bad. Maybe the angle it is because it makes me look incredibly fat, which I am, but gee whiz. But anyhow, so the camera is pretty good. It also has a bunch of nice features. For example, let's see here. So you have things like portrait mode, which blurs everything in the background. That's really cool. It actually made me want to use this for like YouTube videos, but I'm kind of giving Mac away anyway, so it's not going to matter much. Those are things like studio lighting, which makes the lighting a little bit more professional, I guess. You also have reactions, which is pretty much, there we go, reactions. Not too interesting, but it's pretty cool. And then you also have background. So here, what the heck? Oh, okay, it's this thing. Yeah, so it kind of does wag. It's a bit weird with things that's not your face, but it is pretty good considering it's simple as just pressing a button, and so it's pretty good. Mac is very good at doing that, and it's where it shines. Whenever you need to like add an effect afterward, Mac does it so well. I don't know how because I can't just crop my head out perfectly. It's a big issue trying to crop my head out. It causes a lot of issues, especially with the software I'm using right now. But Mac, I don't know how they did it, but they get the headphones right, they get everything right. It's very impressive it's very impressive what they do. So the camera does have really awesome features with it. So even though the camera itself is mediocre, the features and implementation of it, I think, is really what makes it shine. This might also change, like on the MacBook Pro. I had the Air, so the Pro might have a better camera. And then we have the mic, and I don't actually ever remember testing it, but here in the script I did say the mic is very good and it actually carries the score. So way back when I didn't actually like the camera at all because I didn't know about all the extra features that came with it. So this was when the script was still like 1 month old from when I got the Mac. So the mic, very good. I'm assuming in a video I filmed as well where I used the mic a bit. It was probably pretty good. And it's something I do remember. The mic was pretty good. Even when I talked to someone on Slack via Huddle, what I would do is I would just say use my Mac microphone instead of my earphone microphones because it never quite sounded right. So that's something I do recommend. Or that's something I do like about the Mac. The keyboard is, there's one thing I didn't really like about the Mac at all. A lot of people praise it, but I actually found it to be horrible. So one of the things that you do get used to, but something I didn't like at the start, but after a while you do get used to it, is the F keys are so big that every time I try to press a number, I would press an F key instead. But you do at some point adjust to it, and that doesn't become an issue. So if you have that problem at the start while you get your Mac, then you now understand that you will kind of grow out of that. And then every time I try to press shift, I press the tilde, because the shift is this tiny of a button. That's very annoying. It's something that I never got used to, even after like 11 months or 10 months. I never got used to the shift being that small. I just can't. It's that and the freaking enter. Every single time I want to press enter, I would press a backslash. Or I would press a bracket. I hate the keyboard. It's something, even after 10 months, I have so much trouble using. Because I can't get used to that layout. To me, it makes sense that the buttons you use the most, aka the shift button, and aka the enter button, should be the biggest buttons on the keyboard. Because otherwise you have trouble typing with it. To me, that just makes simple sense. That's why when I look at a keyboard, I make sure not to get whatever the heck Apple gives us. That was horrible. That's a horrible experience. I don't like the keyboard at all, and even after 10 months, I can't tell you I liked it. It wasn't that great. I hated the experience of the keyboard. It's probably one of the worst parts about the MacBook. However, one thing I can give to the keyboard is it smelled great. I don't know if anybody else in the comment section has experienced this, but if you smell the keyboard, it smells like pineapples or banana or apple. I don't know what Apple did, but that's amazing. I freaking love the keyboard just because of that smell. Because every time you open up the Mac, the keyboard smell would hit your face for at least the first 2 months. After then, the smell is still there, but it's not nearly as strong. So it's something that makes it feel premium, which for the price, I do respect Apple. That's nice. 10 out of 10. Not the keyboard, but the smell. The keyboard, I wouldn't even bother giving the keyboard a 3 out of 10. It sucked. The build was it was okay, because the build itself, it felt sturdy. I don't know if it really was sturdy. I wasn't going to test it out. It's a very expensive laptop, but it felt pretty strong because I believe it's made of aluminum. I'm not really sure. So it felt pretty strong. So it didn't feel like it was going to break very easily. And it was very small, which was good. And it was very cold. Every time you put it on your lap and you didn't wear pants, you'd feel it was very cold. Not a bad thing. If it's the summer, it's kind of nice. But if it's not summer, it's cold. But that's where the cold stops as well. Because once that little beast gets running, it gets hot. And it gets really hot. Not as hot as some other laptops I've had in the past, but it gets hot. Hot enough that I'd rather just put like a blanket between my legs and the laptop itself. But that's primarily because it doesn't have a fan, which makes it super silent, which was never really a problem for me if my laptop made noise. It's just something I always accepted if my laptop made noise. Because it's a laptop. I don't really care. But yeah, so something that is nice, or those are the kind of nice things about it. Now if you get to the not so nice things, you don't have any ports. You will have no ports and you will be happy. I absolutely hate that, because up until the second I gave away that MacBook, this is the number one thing I hated the most. The keyboard was very close, but the ports. Because I had to choose between either getting a capture device because I wanted to record my gaming, or I had to choose between getting a USB hub. Both of which on Apple is horribly expensive, because if you get a cheap capture device and you try and use it with a Mac, like anything that's cheap and you try and use it with a Mac, you're gonna have a ton of issues. It's not gonna work, or you're gonna spend like 20 years trying to get it to work. So you can't get a cheap like adapt or cheap USB hub, and you can't get a cheap capture device. So I had to choose, because they're going to be about the same price, and I'm probably gonna put pictures up so you can see. So, very expensive choice. Ultimately, I went for the capture device, but I'm kind of sad that I did, because I don't use it, because it turns out my desktop is so powerful, I don't need it. I wouldn't have guessed that. I upgraded the CPU, but I don't think it's going to be that powerful, so if that's 3,000 rand down the drain. I'm 3,000 rand in debt now. Please join the memberships. I would really appreciate it. Anyhow, so I chose the wrong one, because the USB hub would have been infinitely more useful. But why do I need to buy a USB hub? Apple. I'm not even gonna do this in post. Let me just give me a second. Here we go. Apple. Why do I need to buy a USB hub? I paid almost 40 grand for your laptop. This picture up editor laptop is under 5,000 rand. Less than a tenth the price of your laptop. Now, why exactly does this laptop have more ports than yours? Please. I am all ears. You could fit more ports. You could have put a port on the other side of it as well. Because on the one side you have ports and on the other you don't. So when one USB is a little bit too big, you can't use the other port. So you can only use one of the two ports you put right next to each other. I can't explain it enough. That made me so angry. And I just don't understand why that's a thing. Even to this day, I never could get over it. Because the only way to fix that is an expensive thing. Like, why do I have to pay an extra 3,000 rand or 2,000 rand on top of the already existing almost 40,000 rand MacBook? It's like you buy a car, but it doesn't come with any wheels. So then I have to go buy the wheels separately. Oh, it doesn't come with like any lights either. Then you have to go buy the lights as well. No, you pay like 100 grand for a car, then you get the whole car. That's how it works. I pay 40k for a laptop. Why don't I get the whole laptop? Explain it to me. If I can pay 2,000 rand and get a whole laptop. It is my biggest issue with this MacBook. I just could never get over it. It is such a pain. Alright, let's leave that subject because I'm not gonna stop complaining about it if I don't stop now. It's something I've been complaining about for how long with the people around me. When they ask me, is the Mac good? I was like, no, it's not good. That's the one reason, the number one reason why I would not recommend the Mac is because you're gonna have to spend more money after you spend all your money. So yeah. Also, the laptop finishes are surprisingly sharp. Like, so sharp that to the point, or it's so sharp that it's at the point where I don't like resting any part of my body on it. And you know when you like lie in bed and you like have it on your lap and you're typing, it's very sharp. Especially the part where your trackpad is right below it. There's like these sharp little points. It's actually there so you can lift up the lid. But those sharp little points are very sharp. I've actually cut myself with that accidentally because I was moving my arm across very quickly, and I did cut myself a little bit with that. So it's something you should watch out for. Don't get close to kids, I guess. I don't know why a $1 billion company would not round off their corners a tiny little bit more. Such a weird design choice, especially those corners right there. They were very painful. Just saying. So I would not recommend touching those. I'm probably over exaggerating, but I don't know, kind of hurt. And then not part of the build, but the charger, I loved it. MagSafe, mwah. It's amazing. You connect it and it just stays. It's a magnet. When you stand up and you forgot you plugged it in or you trip over the cable, it just unplugs. But it's a two-sided coin there because it unplugs easily. So you don't throw the laptop across the room and you accidentally like walk over the charger. But when you put it on a non-flat surface with the charger in it, like a bed, then you have some trouble keeping the charger in because it's only magnet. So the charger should be like this, but when it's on the bed and it's not flat, it's like this. And then it can't charge the MacBook. So it's a double-edged sword. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that happens with that design decision. So it's not really a bad thing. At least they have a headphone jack, which I actually regularly used. So thank you, Apple. Even though your phones started this whole thing where no phone has headphone jacks now. Even my phone, I hate it. I wish my phone had a headphone jack. Even to this day, I still find times when I'd rather use a headphone jack, and I can't. So, screw you, Apple, but also thank you for including it in your Mac. Very, very weird decision. Alright, let's get to macOS itself before we get to the final point of performance. So, let me just get this. I need to do it again. I'm sorry, guys. I need to do it again. Why, Apple? Wait. I need you to look deep into my eyes this time. Whew. That was an almost. Okay, there we go. Look deep into my eyes, Apple. I can remember. Look deep into my eyes, Apple. Why can I not create a file in your file manager? It's a file manager. Why can't I? I'm sorry, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why do I need to open up software to create a file? It sounds like such a simple little thing, but it drives me nuts so many times because it's something that I do. I create said file. Then I double click on said file so it opens up the application I want to be in. But now I need to open up the application. I need to go file. I need to go new. Then I need to navigate to where I just was in the file manager, where I created all my folders. And in there, I create said new file. Why do I need to go through that whole lengthy process when I could just, when I'm already in the directory with my file manager? I just wanted to right click, create file. I've resorted to trying to use, what's it like, a space driver or something like that instead. Because I think they added it, but on the end of the day, theirs was kind of sluggish, so I decided to not. I decided to use the terminal.
Says the fix requires Mac enjoyers to use terminal, like barbarians. I paid thousands of dollars for fancy virtual buttons. Where are they? And why won't they work?
And then, not to mention, a ton of things are just kind of confusing. Like, the installations of some software is kind of weird. I don't understand it. I don't know if I'm supposed to not understand it, but you have like different methods of installing software and how you install it. It's very confusing. Because how do I uninstall software? Because some of them you can just tap and hold and it gives you an uninstall button, but others you tap and hold and it does nothing. It doesn't give you an uninstall button. I can remember how I installed them. I know how to uninstall with Brew. I know how to uninstall if you gave me the button. I know how to uninstall if you don't give me the button, and it's not installed by Brew. So you're just gonna have to you already have like this little bit of space on your system. You're just gonna have to waste it whenever you try to install something and gamble and hope you can uninstall it again. The tiny things, Apple. It's the tiny things that bother me. Not to mention, it's kind of confusing to use Mac because where's my camera app? I wanted to use the camera for the video, but I ended up using OBS because I couldn't find a camera app. Do we have a camera app? Like a tiny little things like that as well. Not to mention, your calculator sucks, Apple. I always Googled calculator while I was on Mac because, simply put, I couldn't use your calculator. You want to see a good calculator? Look at this. Look at this. Let's see here. Window capture. Okay. I want to capture calculator. Look at this. Look at this, Apple. You see this? This right here. This right here. That's a good calculator. You want to know why? Like, this is a terrible example. But I can use brackets. I could use like modulo. I could use so many things here that yours just simply can't. I did, and not to mention mode. What? Look at all this now. I can actually use this calculator. Nah, mate. Apple, your calculator sucks. Please change it. I can't. Your calculator has caused me so much pain in the past, emotionally. It sucked. most of your software suck because it's minimalistic, but because it's minimalistic, I don't understand how to use it. I know it sounds stupid, but that's kind of what happened. You make it so minimalistic that it's not easy to use anymore. Because it was supposed to be easy to use because you can't do anything else with it. But now whenever you try to do anything other than, I don't know, zoomer thinking with it, it starts going right by you. Anything with Mac, if you want to do anything other than this very straightforward, simple stuff, if you want to do anything other than that, it becomes super confusing. And it becomes very difficult. If it's not something that Mac intended you to do, then you don't do it, because otherwise you're gonna have trouble with it. It's very I didn't like macOS at all. So this is one benefit that you do get is you can install extensions. So pretty much these extensions fix most of your gripes. For example, like that notch I told you about that I just couldn't get used to. It was just always kind of in the way, because you also have like this top bar in Mac where who can it be knocking at my door? Oh yeah, the camera notch, the camera bump. So pretty much it's always in the way. So whenever you have anything up there, and there's too many things up there, because the more things you add to your Mac, the more things are going to appear on that top bar there. It goes behind the camera bump. And what? How did Apple not think of that? So now I have something that I need to click, but it's behind the camera bump, so I can't see it. So you can get extensions to fix that, as well as extensions to like have a black border and remove the camera bump altogether and just have it regular, which makes me wonder, why didn't I just go for the M1? Because never did I removed the camera bump anyways because it was annoying. So I could have just gone for the M1 anyways. But I'll also leave a link in the description to everything or most of the things I used, because most of them were open source, because I'm not paying. No. I paid 40 grand for a MacBook. I'm not paying for the software. You can forget it. You can forget it. I ain't paying a single cent after I get that Mac. I want everything for free, because I can get a home loan for the price of that Mac. Gee whiz. You also get the Apple Office Suite for free, so you get things like Pages. I hate Pages so much. I will never in my life use Pages again, and on the end of the day, I always ended up just downloading LibreOffice. Okay, that's enough of macOS. I hate it. That's the end of it. I don't like it at all. It has its good parts, but most of it sucks. Performance. Yeah, good. I like performance. I never really experienced too many lags or stutters. I do experience them when opening VS Code and running my things. So I did experience them occasionally. At some point I was even scared the Mac was going to freeze and gonna have to reboot. It never did, however. Props Apple, that's impressive. Even my current main system sometimes would freeze and I would kind of need to give it a little kickstart again. So really impressive. But my previous laptop did better. For a reference, my previous laptop was 17,000 Rand. It was literally half the price. Before we move on with performance, one thing I want to also mention is that streaming and recording sucked with this laptop. Because what I did is I had a capture device, and that capture device's job is to take any output my desktop gives visually. So if I play a game, it will take that output and send it into my MacBook. The idea is that my system does not have to record and play the game at the same time. So I can play the game on my system and then record it on my MacBook or stream it on my MacBook, lifting the load from my main system. That means my MacBook does literally nothing else other than taking in input, record it, or taking in input and stream it. It does nothing else. Yet, when I record, I had a bunch of hangs, and when I streamed, oh wow, I'm going to show you an example of when I tried to stream with my MacBook versus when I tried to stream with a laptop that came out in 2015 or something. Or I think it was 2017 or 18. One around there, but it came out before the Mac itself. And it was more affordable to buy than this Mac. Let me do his up here. En toch doen hij niet. Oh, onder dit unlisted is. Natuurlijk. Ik er meer uit. Oké, dit is wel beter. Die lagging is weg. Windows 720p quality. Okay, that's pretty good. How? Your performance is great, but it's overhyped, considering my very cheap laptop did better. Now, the reason the price tag is so high is because to get 16 gigs of RAM, you need to go through all of the tiers of storage before you get to the RAM. So it starts off at like 15k, but then you go up to 500 gigs of storage. Now it is 20k. Then you go to a terabyte, that's 25k. Or something like that. And then when you finally get to 16 gigs of RAM, when you finally go from 8 to 16 and you start at the bottom tier of it, it's like 35 grand. How does that work? Apple, that's terrible pricing, I'm just saying. Because it's not worth 35 grand. All in all, I'd say your Mac Air M2 was worth like 17 grand. Max. Because that's how it felt to me. It didn't feel to me like it's worth more than my previous laptop. Why should I buy a Mac for that price when I can buy myself 3 mid-tier laptops that could perform it against the same thing relatively well? Or 1 decent laptop that will probably outmatch it for like less than what we paid for the Mac. Like, look at the Lemur Pro. I'm not sure if it will outmatch it, but it sure has good battery life. I would consider that a pretty good buy. And thing is, even if you buy it and you spec it out to a decent spec that you think might work against the Mac, it's still gonna end up cheaper. It's insane. So I'm just saying I don't understand where the price comes from, because the price doesn't make sense. I wouldn't be bashing it so hard if the price wasn't so bad. Because for all the little inconveniences I've had, where I wouldn't have had it if I bought something cheaper, it makes me wonder, why did I buy it? So other than the price, which is a big downside considering I didn't see it worth that price, I think it's a good laptop. But if you really want a laptop, if you really want a Mac, I don't recommend that price. If you're going to do something professionally, I recommend just getting yourself a Windows laptop and installing Linux on it. You're going to have a way better experience. If you don't want Windows and you don't want Linux and you do want a Mac and you're doing something professional, you're going to cash out, unfortunately. If you just want a laptop where you can watch YouTube and get through load shedding and whatnot, I'd still not recommend the Mac, because if it starts at like 17k now? 18k for like the base model. That's kind of tight, considering you could get a laptop with a pretty decent battery life for less than that. And you're going to get more storage in turn. So if you're someone who sails the high seas, or if you're someone who just has a lot of photos and videos and stuff on your Mac or on your PC, then it would make sense to get something with a bit more storage. Because the only way you can expand the storage on a Mac is to either buy a whole new Mac, or to get yourself an external hard drive with a USB hub. So you think, okay, it's only going to be like 17k, I can handle that. No, it's going to be 17k, plus the 1k for the external hard drive, plus the 2 or 3k for the hub. So it's going to be plus 4k, it's not going to be worth it. I won't recommend the Mac in any scenario, other than you do want a Mac and you don't do anything professionally. Then I'd say go for the cheapest version of the Mac you can find, with 8 gigs of RAM, now 16 though, so 16 gigs of RAM with 256 gigs of storage. You'll have enough storage to just barely make it through, because on my machine, I literally only have my work things on my Mac and I still ran out of space. That's how terrible that storage option is. So I don't like that storage option at all, but I didn't have much of a choice. But you do get 16 gigs of RAM now, so at least you won't be running out of RAM. So professionally, maybe the cheapest M4 Mac would now be worth it if it's around 17k. I wouldn't recommend any of the other Macs around that price, because if it only has 8 gigs of RAM, it's not worth it, guys. I can guarantee you it's not going to be worth it. Not if you want to do anything professionally. So that's what I feel about the Mac. Overall, I'd give the Mac, if you exclude the price point, I would give this Mac a solid like 8 out of 10, because it's great in every form except the keyboard, the build, and the operating system. But everything else surpassed my expectations. But with the price point, I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 10, because it's not worth it. It's not nearly worth the price. And I still think it was a waste of money. I'm not going to zoom in that much. It's not too serious. GIMP, what the heck? Why are you so slow on Mac? Fix that. And I will see you all again in the next video.